like you. I feel like I'm in a good place right now with actually feeling like there's not more things to get done in a day than I can possibly do. I think that's the definition of stress, right? Like whenever you put your list for the day and you look at it and it's literally impossible, you can't actually accomplish it.
Yeah, we just have to practice to just turn it off and just say, this is our time limit. We're turning it off when it's done. It's okay if there are more things. That is the temptation from working from home. I feel like I literally could write nonstop.
We have these priorities. It's not to make as much money or be as productive as humanly possible. We have to fit it within these boundaries. My name is Lisa, mother of 8 and creator of the blog and YouTube channel Farmhouse on Boom. On this podcast, I like to talk about simplifying your life so you can live out your priorities. I help you learn how to cook from scratch and decorate on a budget through this podcast and my courses, Simple Sourdough and the Simple Sewing series. I also help people reach their goals from home through my business courses, Create Your Blog Dream and YouTube Success Academy. I will leave links to these resources in the show notes and description box below. Now let's get into the show. Welcome back to the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. Something that I like to talk a lot about on here and I get lots of questions about. I like to see how other women are doing this, but just the idea of getting the things done that you need to in your home and simplifying it so that you're able to do that alongside having children and all the other things, but then also possibly, not for everybody, but a lot of people like to pursue a passion on the side. For me, that looks like entrepreneurial endeavors. I have released a couple books, more like my sourdough book, which is a recipe book, and then a DIY book, my original Simple Farmhouse Life book. But having the time and figuring out where all of that can fit into a busy lifestyle. Today, I am having on author of The Perfect Rom-Com, Melissa Ferguson. According to the bio on the back of the book, she's the best-selling author of the titles Meet Me in the Margins, The Dating Charade, and The Cul-de-sac War. She lives in Tennessee with her husband and children in their growing farmhouse lifestyle and writes heartwarming romantic comedies that have been featured in such places as The Hollywood Reporter, Travel and Leisure, Women's World, and BuzzFeed. So we're going to chat a little bit about her writing journey. Obviously, she is in a whole different niche than me. But like myself and many of you, she is a mother, a homemaker, and she's done this alongside having children. And I think a lot of you, myself included, are curious about how that all began, how she began writing, what her future is, so what she plans to write next, and then how she balances career and a writing schedule. She also does some homesteading. So like a lot of you as well, she's in that homesteading space and homeschools. So I think this will be an interesting conversation that you will be encouraged. Melissa, welcome on. I'm really looking forward to having you on. I just did a little intro with the audience, but for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself and your newest book. We're going to chat about how you got into writing. And then also, I'm really interested to hear how you balanced writing alongside having children. I know you have 3 children and they're little. So you've been kind of doing this alongside all of that, as well as homemaking and homesteading and homeschooling and all that good stuff. So yeah, do a little intro.
Sure. Well, I have 4 kids now. So
3. Okay. Sorry. I thought, okay. 4
no, you're
kids.
fine. You're fine. Yeah, I've got 4 kids and about me, let's see. Well, first things first, walking pneumonia is going around. So I am recovering from that. So I'm trying very hard not to cough, but yeah, I write books. I write sweet romantic comedies. I've been writing them with Thomas Nelson for, I guess I started fresh out of seminary in 2011. And years of rejections and writing kind of alone on your bed in the dark for, 9 years before getting my first success. And then, so now I'm several books in and I have a children's book coming out and I've done nonfiction. So just a lot of stuff there. And then I homeschool our 4 kids and kind of have an animal buying obsession that
happens.
Yeah, I know. People who do this understand it. So my husband frequently comes back from trips to find new animals and we're just kind of figuring it out, walking our way and figuring out all the, duck, sheep. I have a sheep tractor coming tomorrow. I am super pumped about a portable sheep tractor and things like that. And we're just kind of stumbling, trial and error, finding our way, but it's been really fun.
Yeah. So how long have you been, I know you built the house. How long have you been on your farm?
Since I think it's been 2021. I think it was in the middle of COVID. My husband's a builder to build
Okay.
this house. And so it was actually crazy because it was probably, he bought all the lumber for it probably 2 weeks before lumber prices and everything went up,
Oh,
skyrocketed. So building prices are so crazy
yeah.
expensive. So we were very blessed. We were able to like build our house for really a fraction of the cost. So it's been great. It's been about 3
Okay.
years.
Okay. Yeah, that was a noticeable shift. I think here it was like right around 2020 that it started going up, but then we thought, oh, that's as high as it's going to go, and then it just kept on going.
And then it went crazy. And especially being married to a builder who's like so closely, it was very hard for him to talk to his clients after that and be like, well, it just went up, $50,000 or something
Yeah,
nuts.
yeah.
And just seemed out of the realm of possible. But
Yes.
anyway.
Yeah, my sister got a quote for a build they were going to do in 2020. And then she took that same plan in 2023 or 4 recently. And so they put the build on hold at that time because it already seemed kind of nuts. And then now it's like, haha, that was cute. That was cute.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's like, oh boy. I know. It's really, really startling. So anyway.
Yes. Okay. So you are new to the homesteading world. So you're adding that on top of everything. Obviously, you have 4 kids, you homeschool. I am curious about how you fit all of this together, like how you balance home and work. I mean, I'm sure you get this question all the time,
Yeah.
but did you start writing pre-children? I mean, it sounds like yes, you did. So you had to like transition into writing with children.
Yeah. And you know what? This is probably like the first time I'm actually excited to answer this question because I have gotten a lot of questions over the years as an author on book tours and things like that. And my answer is always like, I'm struggling and don't have it figured out. And I'm
Don't
not
ask me.
sleeping.
Yeah.
I don't sleep and drink caffeine. And, because I was in the middle of trying to figure it out. I do feel like I just learned the power of getting help. I got to if I'm going to be honest, after my 4th child, I was really stuck because I love my family with everything in me. I felt like this was the right choice for our family, but like homeschooling was the right choice for our family. The choices that I were making for our family with regard to like cooking, cooking from home, you want to do that versus fast food all the time, but I'm also given this opportunity, and it took many years to get to write. And it's not like with books, you can just casually step back and be able to get back in there. It was very, 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 very hard to get in. And so once you're in, you're like, well, I can't just like, what am I going to do? I can't.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just kept telling my husband a lot, like, I don't know what to do because there's nowhere to cut. I feel like there was a point when I was at my lowest where I just felt like it was so intense that I literally didn't feel like I had a space to have a free thought during the day to even think. Because if there were moments to think while doing something, then I need to be thinking about my plotting for my next whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that was really unhealthy for me. And I knew it was. And I finally got to the point where eventually I was crying in the laundry room, kind of like hidden behind sorting baskets. And my husband came home and he found me and I was like, I'm really struggling. And I'm not normally like that at all. And I said, we officially need to get some help. So we ended up finding a wonderful woman who homeschooled her 5 children. She was already tutoring my children at piano once a week. And now she does 2 hours. That's all I needed. It turned out just 2 morning hours, like 8:30 to 10:30, Monday through Thursday. And that's all I needed was for her to help focus on a couple core subjects, language arts and math, while I was able to go run away and go write.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was getting double my time back because it's not just the 2 hours dedicated to homeschool. It's also the 2 hours to writing. And so now I was able to have that dedicated time. So for just 8 hours a week, I feel like I have my sanity back.
Yeah.
And between that and grocery delivery,
yes.
Yes, that is, Instacart is my friend because we're so far out. No, what Walmart or wherever else won't deliver. But Instacart has been a worthy, valuable thing for our lives. So I would say it was that really getting a little help.
Yeah. And what I know about writing, which I haven't done like serious, all I have is recipe books and I have a blog. So it's not the same, but like writing work it's all consuming. Like I can do my other work except for recording a podcast, but pretty much all my other work can be done with kids around. I can, you can create content for Instagram. I can create content for YouTube.
Yeah.
Whereas writing, you need your whole brain. So I think
yeah.
I mean, I've tried writing and concentrating and I'm like, this is hard. Like this is much harder work than the other kind of work I do. And maybe that's a personality thing. But to me, writing is like the ultimate in hard work.
Yeah, it is because it's like you're doing in fiction, especially. It's a big chess game that you're playing with yourself over the course of. I mean, I have a contract, I have a deadline. It's a very, it's like I have 9 months to get this done.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to the marketing and publicity for the next book coming out and getting through proposals so I'm really working on 3 books at the same time. And so that is definitely always a challenge. So once I finally was like, I have to have a dedicated space and time that I'm allowed to fully invest in this and just really walk away, that really helped me. And it turned out I didn't need, obviously I'm going to slip in, like you said, I can slip in and go do my Instagram post or whatever.
Alongside life.
Now, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's that writing that really it's nice to have that accountability.
Yes. And I also am a firm believer that moms, when they have no time and they're given 2 hours, they get done like 8 hours worth of work in those 2 hours. That's real.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. And honestly, sometimes if I get more time, like there are some days where the tutor is like, oh, I can help 2 extra hours. I've noticed I'll get less done. It's like I might as well just because I'm like kind of go crazy. So
yeah, there's no time to shift your focus off whatsoever. You have 2 hours. I find the same thing. My business, I've hired out tons of help over the years, so much help. And sometimes I'm like, wait, I need a few things back because in my hours of work time, I almost don't even know what to do with it right now. Not that there's always something to do,
right?
But sometimes you like that very straightforward, I know exactly what to do, busy work type stuff, because I can like grind it out. But yeah, that's a whole thing in itself.
I know. I also find a particular joy in hearing my washer going at the same time as my bread machine going at the same time as I'm working. It's almost like hearing the vacuum cleaner cleaning up stuff. Right. There's something particularly satisfying about it.
You mentioned bread machine, and this must be something you talk about a lot on Instagram, right? Like a lot of people are asking you about this. What is your bread baking schedule like?
Oh, well, I got to give props to you because your site is where I first discovered like a bread machine like option or even bread making. And so I think my sister-in-law found your site and she was like, you should look here. And so that's where I did my first recipes. So
okay.
That was awesome. And, but yeah, as far as my schedule goes, well, gosh, it just takes, I have done some Instagram posts just showing people literally it takes 4 minutes,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it props, throw it in 4 minutes and then you hear it going and then boom, 6.5 hours later or whatever, it's done and ready to go. And that's so fulfilling, it's so rewarding to feel like, oh, I got this done. So I don't know if I have a schedule besides I'm like, I got 4 minutes and I want to feel like I've done a lot,
Yes. So outside of the tutor that comes, I'm sure you're still spending some time like figuring out the homeschooling stuff. How does your schedule like break out during the day? Do you try to reserve all of your writing for the 2 hours or no? I forget. Yeah. No, 4 days, however long that is.
Yeah.
Do you reserve writing for that time and try to keep everything more compartmentalized with the family?
Well, I actually just framed on my desk, like my Excel sheet of our homeschool schedule. And I think this is our 3rd year homeschooling. And I feel like this is the first time I feel like I have any sort of genuine, like, clue
something to
of
offer
what
here.
I'm doing. And I finally feel good about it. So I don't know. For me, I feel like we wake up, we do farm chores. So my son handles the chickens and getting the eggs. My daughter's giving the duck some water and the sheep. And my other daughter, she's 7. She empties the dishwasher first thing in the morning. So we're handling our farm chores. I'm making breakfast, or my husband's making breakfast. And we started this past year doing also a very intentional 15 minutes of coffee on the front porch with my husband.
Oh yeah, you have a lovely view. You should do that.
I do like it. Yeah, I do like it. Well, and it's so nice to just feel like, because the busyness of life, it was pretty easy to let life just go full force and just feel like, gosh, when are we sitting there actually like enjoying life, enjoying each other, hanging out? So we do that, and I refuse to feel bad about the 15 minutes that I get to chat with him while the kids are doing the chores. And then we eat, and then we jump into the schoolwork, and I get my writing done. That is I'm not allowed in my head to do social media, to do newsletter work, to do whatever, to respond to publicity things or whatever. It's just right during that time for 2 hours. And then then we have other things. I have a hiking co-op that we do with like moms and kids, and we see some incredible hikes every week. We have another co-op that's just kind of like Winnie the Pooh, magical outside science experiments in nature, and reading Brambley Hedge while watercoloring with a bunch of people. And it's really sweet. And then we have sports and activities, and our days just fill up between.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just those things. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds somewhat similar. I mean, our schedule changes throughout seasons based on, kids' ages and what's going on and what work projects there might be. But I'm like you, I feel like I'm in a good place right now with actually feeling like there's not more things to get done in a day that than I can possibly do. I think that's the definition of stress, right? Like whenever you put your list for the day and you look at it and it's literally impossible, you can't actually accomplish it. Somehow you have to get that to not be the equation.
Yeah. Or I also said with my husband, because he's, owns his business, and he feels like there's always more things on a list for him in a day. And I just said, we just have to practice for sure to just turn it off and just say, this is our time limit. It's kind of like that Charlotte Mason time limit thing, where this is our time limit. We're turning it off when it's done. It's okay if there are more things, but I will work to not be, because that is the temptation from working from home for me. And that's the temptation for him being a business owner, is just, I feel like I literally could write nonstop, and, I have an 80,000 book to do,
nonstop money too, right? Like you have to somehow put these guardrails in place. Like we have these priorities, and it's not to make, as much money or be as much as productive as humanly possible. We have to fit it within these boundaries. And yes, we could make more, we could do more, but then what do we have to show for it?
Right. But what's the point of doing more brand deals or, whatever it is? I agree.
Yeah.
We have those conversations, and, with social media, because I do feel like those emails are kind of endless, and it is wild. Just the world we live in. You could work more. You could be more technically successful, but what would you sacrifice? What's the whole point?
Taking a break from this conversation with Melissa to tell you about today's sponsor, Azure Standard. You've heard about them on here many times. I have been using Azure Standard to source high quality organic grains and spices and bulk cheese, meat, so many things for many years now. Long before I was having a podcast at all, I was going to a local Azure Standard drop. So Azure Standard's been around for many, many years. It works essentially like a co-op where you and a bunch of like-minded individuals in your area all place an order and have a drop location that is near you. So in my area, there are 2 drop locations within a 30-minute radius of me, so I could choose to go to either one. We usually do the same one all the time just because we're used to how that one operates and where it meets and all of that. But it can be flexible where you could, choose the drop location near you, you place an order, and then a big truck comes in and delivers everything from all of the local people's order who placed an order to that drop location. So you get to take advantage of pooling together a large order for better pricing and better sourcing. So there's a lot of things that I cannot find locally at all, even if I wanted to, like 50-pound bags of organic hard white wheat that I use to make, muffins, bread, rolls, so many things. I get bulk all-purpose flour, fruit. I really love their raw organic cheddar cheese. It comes in a big block. So instead of buying tiny little blocks of cheese at my local grocery store that is organic and raw, it's hard to find in general, but I can find it at a nicer grocery store, but it's like $10 per little block, and you can get this massive block on Azure Standard. I know that if you head over there, you are going to find some things that maybe you either can't find at all locally or that are much cheaper on Azure Standard through this co-op style model. You can head over to azurestandard.com, so AZURE standard.com. Use code SIMPLE15. So this is 15% off an order of $100 or more to a drop location near you, and place an order and see how you like it. I'm sure you're going to find some things on there like in-season produce. That's such a great price by buying stuff in season, and then bulk finds as well. We really love it, and I know that you will too. Again, azurestandard.com, code SIMPLE15 for 15% off an order of $100 or more to your local drop location. What kind of parameters do you put up? Because I know kind of what we aim for, and then good opportunities come your way, and you have to know very cut and dry, like, what am I going to say? So what do you guys put on yours?
With regard to books, or with regard to like social media and the content creation world?
I guess just everything. Like, you as a business owner from home, where you could, if you stayed up really late one night, you could probably work with this brand, or like there's probably ways you could fit in and like make another book or whatever.
Right.
How do you set that?
Like I just turned down doing another book with my own publisher. They were like, "Oh, we'd love you to do this novella." And I told myself, this is how much time, because I have experienced for sure in the book world, getting pretty close to the deadline and realizing, it's like exam week on steroids as an adult, and it gets to where it was just like, wow, life is not fun. This is not fun. And I don't want to, I want to keep my promises, I want to follow through and keep my promises, but I also, this is the time to be, I don't want to be stressed out to where I'm missing experiences with my children. So I just told myself, I just recognized what my limitation was. And I was like, I can do one book a year in the adult world. And I can, in an ideal world, I can do one book a year in children's. And that's my max. And it doesn't, thankfully in the book world, you can kind of set that. They ask you ahead of time. So they're like, we're writing this contract, what can you do? And they've kind of said, can you do it in 7 months? And I'll say, no. In fact, my next book, the perfect rom-com, the one that comes out in February, is actually literally that. So I wrote a lot of my own experiences as a writer, and how the publisher or your agent, the better you're doing, the more they would say, oh, speed it up, do more. And how you really have to have a strong understanding of what your beliefs are, both in content creation in the social media world and within book writing. There's a lot of similarities there, and just, make your decisions from that. And then in the content creation world, I made the decision to get a talent manager so that I save all that time. And I really kind of set a limitation, because there are seasons where it's just like, wow, this is just too much. So. Right.
Yeah. Yep. I did the same thing. There was some discussion about that amongst some bloggers and content creators in a group I'm in, and like, well, they take 1%. I'm like, yeah, but 10% of, or 15% of nothing, or, like, if I can't do this, then I've always done the same thing. And it's a game changer. There's a lot of behind the scenes with all of that people don't really realize. It's not just as simple as it looks so fluent,
throw a post up. Yeah. It's not just throw a post up. Yeah. There's definitely more. It's definitely a blessing. It's wild.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's totally, you know what? Actually, I wrote another book called Famous for a Living. And it was from that crazy experience that I've experienced, especially on the TikTok side of crazy content creators.
Ooh.
And so it was really good. Learning about phone addiction.
Is it from more of like a comedy perspective too?
Every book I have is Yeah.
Okay.
So this one, hold on, let me see if I have it. Here it is. This is Famous for a Living. And this one, she's like an influencer who ends up in the mountains in Montana at a park and has to do the opposite, and she learns through it. But each of my books, I end up working through something personally and then writing that in, right? So like my multitasking crazy situation of being overstressed, I wrote that in to Meet Me in the Margins. I was the villain sister who had the problem and had to work through it. So yeah, it's fun for me it's really therapeutic for me to get to write my own books.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Really flesh that out. So is your typical demographic for who reads your books I'm just going to make a total guess here, like 35-year-old woman?
I would say
maybe that's not something that you have as much. Like I have all this like data and analytics when it comes to like podcasting and Instagram and YouTube, but
no, they're a bit wider. They say, the 22 to 65-year-old woman or something like that.
Okay. So it's quite the margin. Yeah. We can all find something relatable in these experiences, I'm sure, no matter what walk of life that we're from. Tell us a little bit about your upcoming book. You said this releases in February?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
It is definitely the book I've been wanting to write since my very first writers conference. I had my twins, so I'd been writing for about 4 years quietly, and then I started pitching. I pitched to like hundreds online, sent emails to hundreds of agents, and nobody responded back. And then I learned I had my twins. And when they were about almost 3 months old, I was like, I want to go to a writers conference. I want to see what I can do. And so we drove through the night with twins in the back seat to Philadelphia. And I rolled in at 7 a.m. and just kind of went to my very first pitch session. And those sessions are really nuts because you spend all this time, all this money, all your hopes and dreams for this kind of once in a lifetime or at least once a year at most opportunity. And it's really, at best, you get maybe 3 agent pitch sessions. So 3 15-minute chances to sit one-on-one with an agent. And it's wild. It's this room with like 25 people. There are timekeepers. They put a funnel in your 25 aspiring authors. You're all so incredibly jittery because this is really this is your big time dream. And you sit down, they're like, you've got 15 minutes, and everyone just messes up at what everyone says. You give your quote elevator pitch. And it's just a recipe for a hilarious disaster, really, is what it ends up being. And going in real life and going through that experience and just how so totally crazy it was, the authors following the agents into the bathroom to try and pitch through the stall kind of thing. There were all kinds of funny things that happen.
Captive audience.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you're here. And so it was there at that writers conference that I was like, oh my goodness, this place is just so crazy. And my book, Meet Me in the Margins, it did really well. It sold 100,000 copies in the first year, which is really good for me. And it kind of blew my mind. I just thought, this is really nuts. And
so is that the first one? Sorry, is that the one that you pitched there? No? Okay.
Nope. That was my third book in that book deal. That was this one. And what it was about, what people loved about it was that it was kind of like, it was kind of like an adult rom-com Narnia kind of moment where there's this like secret room in a publishing house, and she swaps back notes in the margins with this mystery critique editor. And I loved writing that story, but I also felt like it was really 2 things. It was really fun to write about books and the publishing world. And it also was easier to write about the publishing world as an insider. It's a lot less research, a lot less worrying, oh my goodness, will someone like fact check this?
Right.
So I just realized, you know what? This book did so well, and my others have done well, but not as well as that one, that I was like, oh, I'll continue with this strand of rom-coms that are in the publishing world. And so that's what I did with The Perfect Rom-Com is I open her up at this pitch session, and she's this aspiring writer, and she has all these hopes and dreams. And of course it fails tremendously and comically. But one thing that does end up happening is she kind of accidentally fixes a mistake on one of his existing clients' manuscripts. or kind of tells him a truth about it and it turned out that manuscript was a book for one of like the biggest rom-com writers in the publishing world. And so he says, hey, I'd like you to be the ghostwriter for this one book, because it turned out she had a bunch of ghostwriters. And then she accidentally becomes a major hit. So she's the secret, super successful ghostwriter but she has greater, deeper aspirations to like save this. I used to teach a ESL to adult immigrants when I lived in Knoxville, Tennessee, and it was a life-changing experience. It was really good. And so that's what she's doing. She's trying to save the bridge, which is this adult immigration and ESL program. And here she is writing fluffy rom-coms under this nemesis villain. And so that's what the perfect rom-com's about.
So when you first went and you pitched your first book, I'm assuming that's the one where you took the twins to the writing conference, right? That's you're pitching your first book. How does that process work? Like, how do they decide what they're looking for and what's going to sell? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot to that, but yeah.
How do the agents? Well, theoretically, you're not supposed to pitch to an agent. I mean, they have a list of what they're looking for specifically. So, and each agent, just like each editor at a publishing house, has their own interests and also openings. So, certain things are more open than others at publishing houses and just in the commercial market entirely. So my first book has never seen the light of day. What I pitched, never. And my second book has never seen the light of day, actually. It was the third book that made it. But I went there pitching speculative, which is very hard to sell, as it turns out. I didn't know it at the time. And it was quasi-academic kind of fantasy, which is like a terrible mix and made sense to no one and would never sell in a million years. But it did turn out at that conference, after being turned down by everybody, at the end of that conference, they had one winner of the big writers conference contest, and they started reading my book off. It turns out I had won the check. And I remember I was wearing my son. I had been defeated for 4 days straight. Everyone had said, basically there was nothing to it. And it turned out I had won this big conference. And then I was able to go to the front. I remember carrying my 3-month-old son, and the agents came up, right? One particular agent I remember came up right after. He's like, so you're going to send me your stuff, right? Like we said. And I said, you literally just turned me down.
Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember. And he's like, no, here's my card. And so that really was a turning point for me. And that people ask me in most interviews, what would you recommend for aspiring writers? My answer is always get yourself to a writers conference where you can learn. I mean, there's a lot to learn about writing, and a lot of rules that you have to follow that you just won't know until you learn them. So might as well do it. And if I could do it again, I don't want to say that I regret anything, because I've learned through all of it. But boy, I probably would have saved myself years of time by going to a writer's conference in the beginning, before spending 4 years writing a book.
The 2 books.
That turned out was not marketable. Well, and then another 2 years on another book. Yeah. So 6 years or 8 years. I mean, it was many, many years of writing and rejections before I switched to writing rom-com and got my first 3-book deal.
Because at those conferences, you learn what kind of books people are looking for and are actually interested in. And maybe you didn't know that before. And so you wrote something that was probably great, but wasn't sellable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, you're learning so much. There are different workshops. There's, you have to figure out how to market yourself. You have to figure out how to use social media. The whole reason I got social media at all was just so that I could write books. And they said, you can't get a contract unless you're on social media. But also then there's a struggle of what are you going to share on social media
about
without having a contract.
Yeah.
So you can't, if you're not actually like a published author yet and don't have a contract, what can you say that would appeal to people? So, which is why eventually I started just sharing about my life and created Our Friendly Farmhouse, because I was like, well, I'll just share about my life and hopefully casually bring in also, here are my books. And that has been beneficial for sure.
So that first contract you got, how did you get it without having any kind of like social following? Now I'm sure, you have all of these books that have done so well. You have a huge audience. I'm sure now they're just like begging you to put out another book. But yeah, at first, how did that work? And what do you recommend for those first time authors who have this as their dream?
Oh, I always say to people, be careful about your steps. It's very easy to misstep, especially in the beginning, and to just get really tired of being patient and really tired of rejection and just go for the first thing that comes up. And there are plenty of red flag agents out there, and there are plenty of red flag vanity publishers out there where you have to remember that publishers are looking at your sales history and your track record for new books. So if you take an option that is not very good, that would hurt you, and then you only sell 12 copies because you went with a publisher that just didn't have the money or the ability to market, it would be very hard. It's even harder, way, way, way harder to get another book published. It would have been better just to not have one.
Okay.
Because before you have a book published, you're not proven yet. Nobody knows how you're going to do. So there's that hope. So I always warn people, I say, be very, very careful about that. And self-publishing is its own world that you can do great things in. I would definitely say self-publishing is a better option than publishing with a publisher that doesn't have marketing money, isn't in the bookstores, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I don't know. In the beginning, I would say that's what authors should do. For me, how I got my book contract was I won that first conference-wide award, and then agents were interested, right? That's something that I could then, I met several of them. And so that I went and spoke to one agent who originally turned me down there. And I said, oh, I just won this award. Here's what happened. And they were like, oh, okay, well, go ahead and send me go ahead and send me your manuscripts. They did. And then they said, you know what, this isn't for me, but I have someone else within my agency who is newer, who might be interested. So it was a reputable company, but it was bottom of the barrel, brand new person, fresh off, So I was taking a gamble there. It turned out it was the wrong gamble, because then I spent a couple years with somebody who, it turned out, just kind of gathered clients, as many as he could, right? It was like he didn't even try. He would just kind of gather all these authors. And of course, every author is desperate and wants to be represented.
Yeah.
But then he didn't actually have the connections or the care for you to actually try to get you in places that were meaningful. And so I remember about 2 years of being with him, he said on the phone to me one day something about my children's book. And I said, this book isn't a children's book. The book you've been pitching for 2 years is adult fantasy. And I just was like, that was kind of the last straw, was realizing, oh my goodness, he doesn't even know what he's submitting to. He almost got me an offer for a publisher. I turned it down. That was a really, really ineffective. It would definitely have been better to self-publish my book kind of place. It could have ruined everything. So I just had to make that call after 2 years of being with him, that I'd rather have no agent than this, which was very hard. And then at that point, I'd learned quite a bit. I was working really hard. I was volunteering at writers group. I led a writers group, and I had gone to a few more conferences and made some more friends at that point. And that's when I met a different agent, and he took me on, and he pitched my book to Thomas Nelson. And I had met somebody else at a different conference, or at a different event. And she was in England, and it was a British company, and they offered me a 2-book deal off of that second book that I wrote. But it was a very small advance. It was not a big, it was better than nothing for sure. But Thomas Nelson was a lot bigger. They're an umbrella under HarperCollins. They have a lot more opportunity. And I had said at the time, that was a very stressful moment, because I said, I'd really like to go with Thomas Nelson but they were just the beginning chats of that. And my agent said, a bird in hand is worth 2 in the bush. You should just take this offer. And I went against his advice. I said, I think I'm going to wait, because I think this could be better for me long-term. And it turned out I did get the opportunity to go with Thomas Nelson, and they did give me the 3-book deal. And then the rest is history. So it's been very successful since then.
Yeah. It sounds like so much of what you've learned through all of this, because I'm thinking, how do you even decipher a good contractor, a good agent, is like talking with other authors, going to those conferences, like you said. It's like that with any industry. I tell students that all the time in like blogging and YouTube, that you have to hang around with the successful people in, not like in real life, but virtually. Hang around so that you can even see what questions they're even asking that you might not even thought was a thing. So what are some of these conferences, or how do you build a circle of authors that you become friends with and build those connections?
Well, so the conferences vary based off of what genre you want to write. So the way I
Right.
tell people
Okay.
what's a good conference versus what's not a great conference, because there are plenty of people, those who can't do teach kind of thing.
Yes.
There are
Yeah.
plenty. Yeah.
That's
There
probably
are
true.
plenty of people who claim that they are experts at book selling or book writing or whatever, being an author. But the sad reality for some people is that they aren't very good at it, but they want to make money still. And so this is a way to make money, right?
Right.
And there are legitimate people out there, but there are definitely people who you just got to watch out for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always say the way to look it up is go to a writer's conference, look up your genre that you want to do, and then go find the writers conference and then go under the pitching tab. And if there are agents and editors at publishing houses who are actively, like in the last 2 years, selling multiple books in places that are, you see them in the bookstores, right? They're in Target, they're in Barnes and Noble, they're in the airports. They're books that you have heard of, then that's going to be your goal. Those are the kind of places you want to go to versus a writer's conference where, an agent 15 years ago published that one book that did well. No. It needs to be like the last 2 years.
Yeah. Current. Many years ago, when I was pregnant with my 5th child, I decided to add YouTube to my internet business to diversify and open up a whole world of opportunities. Many things have changed about YouTube since that day. A lot of things, honestly, have remained the same, but I love to educate students on how to create an income from home through YouTube with my YouTube Success Masterclass, which you can find over at bit.ly/farmhouse YouTube Masterclass, bit.ly/farmhouse YouTube Masterclass, all lowercase. There I share the mistakes that I made when I first got started, how you can achieve success faster, and how to earn a diverse and stable income from the YouTube platform. So if you are interested in using video to reach a wider audience for a business you already have, or you're just curious about what it might look like to incorporate YouTube into your life as a homemaker or a stay-at-home mom, go ahead and check out that free masterclass that I put together for you. Yeah, I think whenever I published my first book, which it's like nothing, it didn't do very well or anything, I didn't realize any of this. And I just was like, oh, yay. And they did no marketing. Like anything that sold because I put it on my socials, like I didn't think about what all was involved with the publisher, like what they are getting money for. I think, and that's because I'm not a person in the writing world. I'm sure if you hang around there, you're like, well, this should be very clear and obvious. But I think for a lot of people, they just like want a book deal,
Yeah, no, I definitely know. And I think the reality for even publishers, social media is such a big thing. It's kind of like how you hear about movies casting actors who have large social media followings. They're like, we even know we're huge.
You'll market it.
But the reality is, yeah, we need you because our market is so saturated. There's so much competition. And so I can't remember what the number is. It's staggering. It's like 2 million new books come out a year, something like that. And over 90% sell less than 1,000 copies in their lifetime. And so if you think about the capacity someone has to read a book, even a very avid reader can only read so many books in a year, right? Well, I don't know. It can vary widely. People on Goodreads are nuts. They read so many. But even at best, let's say 360 books a year, right? Which the average book, the average book takes like eight hours to read, right? So let's say they read one a day and do
That's all they
nothing
do
else
with their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They eat, food, and read. Well, 360 compared to 2 million new books every year, in addition to the books that come every year prior. The competition right there is just absolutely out of this world. I mean, it's just so intense. So that's why I think it's important for people who are looking at how many books can you fit in a bookshelf. Like my book has been in Target, a couple of my books, and the shelving space for it is how many rom-coms can they fit there?
Not many.
25. Let's say 25.
Right.
Well, there are millions of books. So go with a publisher who has the ability to do that long shot thing and get your book there, because that's huge, because you don't have the reach, right? No matter what. I mean, I guess you can do your best on social media. Social media is very powerful if used correctly, as I'm sure you know, but it's really nice to have your book there. That's always my goal. I want, like, when I think of my target audience, I want it to be like a mom like me who's walking down the aisle and getting her milk, and then she sees a nice happy-go-lucky book and says, "Oh, I
a good
would
escape
like this
from
myself.
My life for a little while." A laugh.
Ta-da!
Yeah,
give me a laugh, give me a happy moment, and then that's what I want. And so, yeah,
you just can't reach the masses like that, even with a huge social following. Think of how many people walk into Target. So how did you know? Like, how does one know they have a good idea? Because I think you must have a lot of confidence, but I think a lot of people are thinking like, oh, I have a dream to write a book, do something like that as a mom. But like the chances that mine is going to be the 25 out of the millions on the Target shelf, how did you build the confidence and to know that your idea was good?
Oh, well,
that's a real loaded question.
I know. I think that's an interesting question, because I don't think about it that way. I think about when I'm writing a book, I think I come at it from an entirely different perspective. And you know what? Maybe I'll put it this way, because I said this to somebody else on a different podcast. I said, if you're looking to make money off of, or to be a famous author or whatever, if that's your goal, do something easier, like become a Hollywood celebrity. Like
something easier.
Yeah, really.
So that's about how
I just think if you're in it for that goal, you're going to be so disappointed, because I know
that's fair. I mean, that's not my goal with my books. They're not in Target, and I just released a new book and it's doing well for like my space, but yeah.
But yeah, even at the top though, even for the authors that I know some authors who are really extremely successful. Even the authors at the tippy top, you're just a moment in time. It still can go down. Just because your book is in Target right now, today.
Oh yeah.
The average time it lasts in it is like 3 months. So, okay, congratulations.
That makes sense.
Now someone else is in, so.
Yeah, right.
So I think you're going to be disappointed if your goal is to like be really successful. I think for me at least, or for lots of the other fiction authors, I stumbled into writing. It was never my goal. I'm an extrovert, like 10 out of 10, never wanted to be alone, always loved being surrounded. And so I
have a sister like that. It's such a funny thing to witness. Like you just expect that everybody's like that, right?
Yes. And my sister-in-law is very not like that. And she's like, oh my gosh, she puts up with me.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, I was 10 out of 10, right? And then, so of course, writing alone in isolation is not the
that
dream
seems like
job.
a weird career.
No, no. The only reason I did it was because years ago, I finished my degree. I got a master's in biblical studies from Asbury Seminary, and my husband had a surprise job that took him to. It was going to be 6 weeks. He was going to like do some construction, renovate this apartment complex, and he asked if I wanted to go, and I had nowhere else to go. We had no money, and we had no children. And so, of course, I was like, yeah, I'll go. But what that equaled was me essentially living on an air mattress for a year, it turned out, in his little apartment. And, it just having very intense and interesting adventures, because it was a rather scary apartment complex too. So I did nothing and had no money. But what happened while I was there was I had seen... and I'd read all the Twilight books, because I I had nothing to do and I saw 10 minutes of Twilight and the story plot hooked me. And then I read all the books. And after I did that, though, I went to the grocery store and there was a girl there who got a tattoo that was a Twilight tattoo on her arm. And that was a moment for me where I realized, you know what? This author, Stephanie Meyer, is so influential around the world that a total stranger has decided to get a tattoo. That is how influential, that is how important this is
right,
to this woman.
To somebody,
and
yes.
Yeah, and I thought, I wonder if it's possible to write my own messages in a fun fictional format that could also share my own messages that I would have. Like, I wonder what that would look like. And I had nothing but time and I had a computer. Right. And so I just started writing. And when that happened, I said to Ben, I pretty much was hooked immediately and I just started writing 10 hours a day.
Wow.
And that turned into a year of having no friends. And because I couldn't even get a job, it was supposed to be that 6-month job that he had. So it wasn't even time for me to get a job while there, except it kept getting pushed back because that's how construction is. And so that really changed my life. It turned out to be a massive blessing though, but the least expected blessing. And I think what I learned from that was I love writing stories that have meaningful messages,
right,
written in an entertainment form. Like I want to make the world a little bit lighter. I want to,
yes,
in my own way. And so that's why I write what I write. And, sometimes a lot of people read it. Sometimes 100,000 people in a year read it. And sometimes it's 35,000 a year, but regardless, regardless, it's meaningful to me that somebody's reading it. And I hope it's changing their lives a little bit or making them happier a little bit as it has for me in my writing moment. I feel like it's a true calling, I guess.
Yes. And there has to be some of that. Like you can't be driven by like money and success alone like that. There has to be something you're feeling good about what you're putting out into the world. So I think that's a really good answer. I assumed that you must have been writing since you were a little kid.
No.
It sounds like that wasn't always the case.
No, I did cheerleading because that was fun.
Okay.
And around people.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and I did always love reading. I've always been hooked by books. And so I think I was meant for it. I just never, ever in a million years
didn't discover
would have thought this was for me.
Well, and that happens. Like people think I must have grown up baking bread. I didn't bake bread till I was in my 20s. And, I didn't even right away do sourdough. So I think that people sometimes think you're almost like born with certain talents and they're not cultivated.
Yeah. Or like, this is just how you always are. And it's like, no, there's a long stumbling process. You are the expert, it seems like, in homesteading. And I am like the stumble along former suburban cul-de-sac girl who's figuring out like, wait a second, like stainless steel is better than plastic, or whatever. And I'm like making these discoveries as I go. So
yeah, I don't know that I'm the expert in homesteading, but definitely I feel like I have a certain level of expertise in my kitchen. I will say that that has been built over time. You mentioned you've always liked to read. One of the audience questions was creating or kind of like facilitating raising well-read children. Do you have any tips for that? Or how are you, I'm sure you're reading to your kids a ton since you're an author.
Yeah, that's funny. I'm sitting in like our library with the kids. So I'm like surrounded by books actually right now. Ta-da,
okay. That's
books.
How you create well-read children.
Yeah. But you know what? That's probably partly it. I would say raising well-read children. I think it's common answers that most people would give. We don't have a lot of screen time. And that's probably going to be the biggest factor for kids, loving to read and be outside.
Yeah, for books to be their speed.
Oh, yeah.
For books to be entertaining enough.
It 100%. My daughter is the most intense reader ever. She's the girl who last night was at a soccer game with my son and was sitting there in the middle of the sidelines, like engrossed in her book. You can't get her out, right? So she's that hardcore reader. My mother-in-law is the kind of person, they just have truly read for hours and hours.
Yeah.
They just love it. And I don't know. I don't even know what to say besides we just have read to them forever. Now, do I do that thing though? I will say, this is one thing I don't do. I don't sit there and try. I remember when my twins were young and they'd be like, now we read them to sleep, or now we read to them. It's like, no, if they're one, they might want to flip through a book a little bit, but it's really it's really 4 and up when they get really,
Oh,
really,
yes.
really invested. And
Yeah.
so, and between us homeschooling, I mean, we just have all kinds of time, and we're so intense about our library. It's kind of a second home for us. So the kids have always grown up in an environment that's 100% like going to the library is like the most exciting still for them. They're so excited. In fact, I asked if we could do a birthday party there for my kids recently. And they were like, Melissa, I don't know if we can legally do that. I'm like, please, that'll be great.
I'm an author. Didn't you see?
I literally, oh, no. They know we're friends. I literally included my children's librarian, Michelle, in this book. She's in the back of it. Like she's signing the book. And she's in a scene because like, I love them so much. And, they're a big part of our lives. So story time, like I used to take them to story times at the library all the time. It was just I don't know, books are huge. And especially for Christmas gifts, I'm pretty hard pressed to say no to a book, especially a book that I feel good about. Obviously if there are content questions, no, but if my kids want a book, I will find the book for them.
Yeah.
Kind of always.
Well, and also I think kids tend to love what you love because you show so much excitement about it. So you clearly love reading. I think that's going to rub off to an extent like, oh, this is a form of entertainment that, mom even likes to do late at night. Like she's always sitting there reading.
Well, and the Hoopla, if people haven't discovered Hoopla, they should get themselves on Hoopla immediately because that's through the library system. And that's now buy my books, everyone hearing this.
Don't get them from the library.
Buy them full price and ask for them from the library. But Hoopla.
If you're going to get it on Hoopla, make sure you ask your library to stock it, right? Is that a happy?
Oh, I love that. Yes, I know. I love when people go in and ask for my books in the library. But I think Hoopla and listening to things in the car, that is a great first step, I feel like, for someone who's like, wow, why don't my kids love it? Well, play the Boxcar Children in the car. And before you know it, they're going to love it. So,
yes, I think those are all really good tips. All right. Well, tell the listeners where you prefer. I know that's all over the place, but where do you prefer for them to purchase this book? Your newest book.
Well, preference, like truly, honestly, I would prefer people go to my Instagram, Our Friendly Farmhouse, and then go to my link in my bio and then purchase it from there because shockingly, it's mind-blowing to me that financially I can make just as much getting affiliate income as I did writing the book, which is crazy. So that would be extremely helpful. But of course, to be honest, my publisher really loves when the thing that makes the most difference is when people pre-order the book. And I don't think people realize that because when they see pre-orders, what they can do, the publisher can do is then like my publicist will then go talk to various media outlets or book buyer places. Yeah, my marketing manager. And they say, hey, we're getting pre-orders here. And so then Barnes & Noble, for example, will make a bigger buy. And they'll say, oh, well, if it's going to start having buzz, then we'll do bigger buys. And bigger buys mean better placement, better, it's like this big snowball. But pre-orders, I feel like that actually is probably the number one. And that can happen anywhere. They love to see a variety of places from Target to Barnes & Noble to Books A Million to anywhere.
Right. So this is currently, this podcast comes out November 19th. So is this currently up for pre-order right now?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it is indeed.
All right. Awesome. Well, I have to admit, I probably have read like 2 fiction books in my entire life. Like literally, my husband's a huge reader and, I should be the one to learn how to get well-read kids. I do read to my kids at night and they're obsessed. Like my little boys, I put them to bed and I read them book after book after book and they never want to stop. So I do, I read them fiction books, but like after talking to you, I'm like, this sounds so fun. Like I think I'm gonna have to read a fiction book.
Here, well, you want to know my secret? I'm the same way. I read so much on these podcasts. People ask me lately, they're like,
what are your favorite books?
Yeah. And I'm like, Raising Goats for Dummies. And
I like nonfiction. Love it.
I know.
But yeah, that is so funny, really.
Yeah. And that's like, see, you're allowed to say that.
You're not.
I'm not. I like read my kids all their books. I read all of these, how to garden, how to bake bread, how to whatever.
Right.
But in the rom-com space, I will say I love reading rom-com, but I've struggled to find clean rom-com that is like
yes,
You've Got
what you're getting
Mail.
into. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's like the You've Got Mail clean PG level is what I write. And that's what I also want to read. I don't like spicy scenes or anything like that. And yeah, and so it's actually oddly hard to find. I will say Bethany Turner is a friend of mine. She has some rom-coms. Courtney Walsh, she has some rom-coms. So it's like there are some people that are Rachel Linden. There's some people who are close to my heart who do that. But for the most part, I don't feel like rom-com is unique because it's a lot of intense spicy with a pretty cover that looks just like mine. That's the opposite.
Yes, you don't know what you're getting. Like you might begin, and I knew from looking at your Instagram and everything that that's what we were talking about. How would have been if you would all of a sudden started saying certainly they'd be like, oh no,
I know,
but I already knew.
I know. I need like a rating system.
But
on rom-com specific. I think they need a rating system on the side that says PG because that's where I would be. Actually, I might even be G. I'm pretty hardcore. So
if you want spicy, don't check out her books. If you want a happy,
I know.
Yeah.
So, but it is always funny. I will say it is funny when I get the spicy readers because there are a lot out there who read my books and they're like, wow, I just finished this super crazy, totally insane, blah, blah, blah. And this was a nice palate cleanser in between. And I'm like,
in between my next one.
I guess I'm a palate cleanser. I appreciate you reading.
Compliment?
Thank
I don't
you.
know.
I know. It's interesting. But I do appreciate them reading my books too. So
right. We'll take it whatever you can get, right?
I know. Yeah. Go for it.
Awesome. Well, tell the listeners you share the most, like, as far as social media on Instagram, correct? Over at Our Friendly Farmhouse, right? Is that the best place to follow up?
Yeah. Or my newsletter is melissaferguson.com.
Okay. Awesome.
I don't even know if you could hear me. I was like, Melissa.
Yeah, no, I heard you. And we'll leave links down in the description box and the show notes below as well for links for the books and then also where to follow you and your newsletter and anything else anybody wants to follow along with. So I think this was encouraging. A lot of moms have things that they want to pursue and there's sort of this like, oh, you put your life completely on hold, which of course you do lay down a lot of your life with kids, but there's also margins and there's time to pursue those goals. And I think for a lot of people that can be a helpful outlet. So I think this will be encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that give yourself a little bit of time consistently every day. And it really does amount to a book, you know, it's 2 hours a day, amounts to a
I've said the
book.
same thing about a blog. I mean, it's not the same, but in some ways I'm like, well, if I put in, like you said, 8 hours a week here and there, that's per year, you know, do some quick math. That's a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah. It really matters. And so it's not your 8 hours a day kind of thought, as long as you think about it that way.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
As always, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next episode of the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast.